She believed, marry a disabled millionaire. But what unfolded at the ceremony shocked her. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain streaked across the windows of the courthouse like silver wires being pulled by the wind. Inside, the hall smelled faintly of old paper, polished floors, and cold air from an overworked heater. Emily Carson stood there, clutching the thin strap of her worn purse, her fingers numb from nerves more than the Chicago winter. Her breath shook each time she exhaled. She kept replaying the last 48 hours in her head, trying to convince herself that she was doing the right thing. Across the hallway, the man she was about to marry sat motionless in his wheelchair, Alexander Hayes. The millionaire everyone whispered about. The heir to the Hayes Corporation. The man whose recent accident had left him paralyzed from the waist down. At least, that was what the world believed. His posture was impossibly straight, his face composed, his gray eyes unreadable. His black suit fit him perfectly, immaculate and expensive in a way that made the entire courthouse seem smaller. The only thing that looked human about him was the way his fingers tapped, slow and rhythmic, against the wheel of his chair, as if he was counting down to something. Emily tried not to stare, but she could not help it. She had only known him for 3 days. 3 days since his attorney approached her with an offer she could not refuse, an offer that felt like a lifeline disguised as a lifeboat. Marry Alexander. 1 year. A contract. Her mother's medical debts erased. A monthly stipend large enough to keep them afloat. It sounded cold, transactional, unreal, but when you were drowning, even a dangerous ship looked like salvation. Miss Carson, his attorney said, stepping toward her. It is time. Emily nodded, even though her legs trembled. She smoothed her thrift store dress, wishing it did not cling so tightly to the anxiety beneath her skin. She forced her feet to move, the heels clicking softly against the marble as she approached Alexander. He lifted his gaze to her. There was no warmth in it, but no cruelty either, just an intense focus that made her breath hitch. Are you ready? He asked, his voice steady, low, controlled. A voice that belonged to a man used to giving orders, not asking questions. As ready as I will ever be, she whispered. He nodded once. Good. This will be quick. A judge stepped out from the chamber, holding a thin folder. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting pale shadows across the walls. Emily felt as though she was stepping onto a stage where she had never learned the lines. The ceremony began immediately. No music, no guests, no flowers, just legal words echoing inside a quiet room, bouncing off polished stone. Do you, Emily Carson, take Alexander Hayes? Her pulse pounded in her ears. She felt every heartbeat like a hammer striking steel. I do, she said, her voice firmer than she expected. When it was Alexander's turn, he spoke without hesitation. I do. 2 words, precise and emotionless, like items checked off a contract. The judge signed the certificate with swift strokes of his pen. The sound echoed, final and cold. Congratulations, he said. You are now legally married. Emily let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Alexander extended his hand. She took it, expecting coldness, but his grip was steady and deliberate, grounding in a way she did not anticipate. From this moment, he said quietly, we begin our arrangement. Arrangement. Not marriage, not partnership, a structured deal. Emily reminded herself, this was survival, nothing more. But as Alexander released her hand and motioned for his attorney to push his wheelchair forward, she felt a strange weight settle in her chest. A tension. A question. Something unspoken simmering beneath his controlled exterior. She did not know it yet, but the truth that would shatter everything had already begun to form cracks beneath the surface. Emily followed Alexander out of the courtroom, her steps light but unsteady, as if she was walking on a floor that could collapse at any moment. The hallway felt colder now, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like distant insects. Outside, the winter rain had thickened, drumming against the tall courthouse windows in restless pulses. A black car waited at the curb, sleek and polished, with a driver standing by the rear door. The kind of car Emily had only seen in movies or parked outside luxury hotels. The driver opened the door for Alexander first. He maneuvered his wheelchair with practiced ease, his movements precise, almost mechanical, as if he had done this 1,000 times despite his recent injury. Emily hesitated for a moment before sliding into the seat beside him. The leather interior was soft and cool, smelling faintly of cedar and clean linen. She clasped her hands in her lap, trying not to fidget. Alexander studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You will move into the Hayes estate today," he said. "Everything you need will be provided." His tone left no room for negotiation. It was not harsh, but firm, like a man who had spent his entire life making decisions that shaped companies and boardrooms. Emily swallowed. "I understand." He nodded once and looked out the window as the car pulled away from the courthouse. The city blurred past them, neon reflections on wet pavement, steam rising from street grates, hurried pedestrians clutching umbrellas. Emily watched it all with a distant ache. She was leaving the only world she knew. After several minutes of silence, Alexander spoke again. "There are terms you must follow once you are inside the estate." She turned to him, her hands tightening around each other. "I read the contract," she said softly. Reading it and living it were two different worlds. Alexander continued, his voice calm but precise. "You will have your own room. You may come and go as you wish, as long as you maintain discretion. My staff will treat you with respect, and you will do the same. And above all, you will not involve yourself in my business matters. Is that clear?" "Yes," Emily said. "It is clear." He gave a short nod, satisfied. But Emily noticed something subtle, almost hidden, in the set of his jaw. Stress, or maybe exhaustion, she could not tell. The car continued north, crossing the river and weaving into the quiet, wealthier districts of Chicago. Trees lined the streets here, bare branches dusted with frozen rain. The neighborhoods grew larger, the houses more spaced out, until the sidewalks disappeared entirely and were replaced by long driveways and wrought iron gates. When the car finally slowed, Emily's breath caught. The Hayes estate rose in front of her like something carved out of old money and colder reputations. Tall stone columns framed the entrance. Warm lights glowed from enormous windows. Manicured hedges lined a path that disappeared around the side of the property. This was not a house, it was a statement. The driver stopped at the base of the steps. A housekeeper stepped out as the engine quieted, her uniform crisp, her posture straight. She gave Emily a polite smile before turning to Alexander with a bow of her head. "Welcome home, Mr. Hayes." Alexander's expression shifted, just for a moment. Something tightened behind his eyes, something like pain. "Take Mrs. Hayes to her room," he said. "Mrs. Hayes." Hearing it spoken aloud sent a strange chill through Emily. The title felt heavy, like a coat that did not quite fit. The housekeeper nodded. "Of course. Please follow me." Emily stepped out of the car. The air smelled like wet stone and winter pine. Before she followed the housekeeper, she glanced back at Alexander. He met her eyes briefly, and in that single moment, she saw something beneath his composed exterior. Something that looked almost human, almost vulnerable. Then the driver began to roll his wheelchair toward a side entrance, and whatever she saw vanished into the cold night. Emily turned away and followed the housekeeper into the mansion, unaware that every step she took was pulling her deeper into a truth she could not yet see. The hallway inside the Hayes estate stretched long and quiet, softened by warm lights and thick carpets that muffled every sound. Emily walked a few steps behind the housekeeper, her eyes trying to take in everything at once. Portraits lined the walls, each one painted in deep, serious tones. The faces all carried the same sharp bone structure and the same commanding gaze, generations of the Hayes family watching her as she passed. "This will be your room, Mrs. Hayes," the housekeeper said gently, stopping in front of a tall white door near the end of the hallway. Emily hesitated. The title still felt foreign, like she was stepping into a life that had never been meant for her. When the door opened, she found a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. A soft bed with pale linens, a window overlooking the garden, a dresser made of polished wood. Everything felt untouched, like a showroom prepared for someone who never came. "If you need anything, press the call button by the door," the housekeeper said. "Dinner is served at 7, but Mr. Hayes usually eats alone unless there is a public appearance." Emily nodded, unsure what to say. The door closed softly behind the housekeeper, leaving her in stillness. She walked slowly toward the window, tracing her fingers along the smooth surface of the dresser. Outside, the garden lights glowed faintly, illuminating trimmed hedges and a stone fountain. Everything was beautiful. Everything was distant. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from the hospital, reminding her of an unpaid bill. Even now, in this mansion, reality clung to her like a shadow. She sat on the bed and pressed her hands to her face, trying to steady her breathing. This was supposed to be security, a way to save her mother, a way to survive. So why did it feel like she was sinking deeper into something she did not understand? A soft knock startled her. She stood quickly. "Yes?" The door opened, and a man stepped inside. He wore a suit, but unlike Alexander's lawyer or staff, he had a kinder face, with warm eyes and a calm, even voice. "I am Dr. Ryan Porter," he said. "I oversee Mr. Hayes' physical therapy sessions. I just wanted to introduce myself since you will be living here." Emily blinked. "It is nice to meet you, doctor." He nodded politely. "I know this situation may feel overwhelming. Mr. Hayes has been through a great deal since the accident. He has good days and difficult days." Emily hesitated. "Is he doing any better?" There was a slight pause before the doctor answered. "He is physically strong," he said carefully, "but recovery is complicated. Sometimes the emotional wounds are slower to heal than the physical ones." Emily sensed something unspoken in his tone, but she did not push. "If you ever have questions, or if you are unsure about anything here, you can reach out to me," Dr. Porter added. "The estate can feel intimidating at first." "Thank you," Emily said softly. "I appreciate that." He gave her a reassuring nod and stepped back into the hallway. The door closed again, leaving her with more questions than answers. She changed into a simple sweater from her purse and checked the time. It was almost dinner. The thought of sitting alone in this enormous room felt unbearable, so she decided to find the dining area early. She walked through the hallway, following the soft glow of wall lamps. The mansion was quiet, almost too quiet. Every turn revealed more artwork, more polished floors, more empty space that echoed with silent history. When she reached the dining room, she stopped in the doorway. The table stretched long and elegant, set with more utensils than she knew how to use. A single place was prepared at the far end, as if expecting a royal guest. Emily stepped closer, wondering if she was meant to sit there alone. But then she sensed movement. Alexander appeared in the doorway on the opposite side of the room. His wheelchair moved almost silently over the smooth floor. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met. "You came," he said. "I was not sure if dinner was required tonight," Emily replied. He studied her for a moment. "It is not required, but it is courteous." Emily nodded, unsure if that was approval or correction. Alexander gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit. It will make conversation easier." Her pulse quickened as she approached. Sitting beside him felt different than sitting beside a stranger. This was her husband, legally, publicly, even if it was all an arrangement. She sat down, smoothing her hands against her lap. Alexander watched her quietly. "There are things you should know about this house," he said, "and about me." Emily felt a chill at the base of her spine. She leaned forward slightly. "What kind of things?" Alexander paused, his eyes steady, his jaw tense. "Things that will matter," he said, "long before our first public event." His voice carried a weight she could not yet decipher. And for the first time since she entered the estate, Emily felt the faint, unmistakable sense that she had stepped into a secret much larger than a contract. Emily's heart beat a little faster as she sat beside Alexander at the long, polished dining table. The soft glow of the chandelier cast warm light across the room, but the air felt cool, almost too quiet, like the house itself was listening. Alexander rested his hands on the armrests of his wheelchair, his posture precise, every movement controlled. "What should I know?" Emily asked, her voice low but steady. Alexander exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words with careful intention. "Life here moves according to expectations," he said. "My family built this legacy on reputation and power. Every appearance, every engagement, every photograph has weight. People watch. People interpret. People judge." Emily nodded, even though her throat felt tight. She knew this arrangement came with pressure, but hearing him say it made the reality sharper. "You will learn quickly," he added. "There is no space for mistakes in this house. And the people around us will not be gentle if they think you do not belong." Emily stared at the tablecloth for a moment, tracing the embroidered pattern with her fingertip. "I am trying," she whispered. "I will do my best." Alexander's gaze softened just slightly, though his tone remained steady. "I know you will. That is why I chose you." The statement hung between them like a fragile thread. Emily lifted her eyes, searching for meaning, but Alexander looked away just as a member of the staff entered the room with 2 plates of dinner. The food was arranged carefully on fine china, steam rising in delicate curls. Emily could not remember the last time she had eaten something that looked like art. The staff member left quietly, and a heavy silence settled again. Emily picked up her fork. "Is this how dinner usually is?" she asked gently. Alexander paused, then offered a dry, almost humorless smile. "Quiet, predictable, efficient." He took a bite, his hands steady and practiced. Emily followed, trying not to appear overwhelmed. As she ate, she kept catching small details. The way Alexander's jaw tightened whenever he shifted slightly in his seat, the way he breathed through discomfort without acknowledging it, the way he avoided speaking about anything personal. Halfway through the meal, she gathered her courage. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. "Your injury?" Alexander froze for a brief second. His eyes lifted, sharp and guarded, but not angry. "Why do you ask?" "You looked uncomfortable," Emily said. "I was worried." His expression shifted again, this time into something unreadable. "My condition is manageable," he said simply. "Pain is irrelevant when there is work to be done." The way he said it sent a faint shiver down her spine. It felt like a thought he had repeated to himself countless times. When dinner ended, Alexander pushed back slightly from the table. "We will have our first public appearance in 3 days," he said. "A charity gala downtown. I will have a stylist sent to your room tomorrow morning. They will take your measurements, go over your wardrobe, and teach you how to carry yourself in front of cameras." Emily nodded, trying not to show her panic. She had never been to any gala, let alone one filled with wealthy families and reporters. "And Emily," he added, his voice lower, "do not let anyone make you feel small. They will try. They always do." His tone surprised her. It was not warm, but it held a strange, steady conviction, as if he was preparing her for battle rather than an event. "I will remember that," she said. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded to the staff member waiting silently at the doorway. "Take Mrs. Hayes back to her room," he said. Emily stood and followed the staff member toward the hallway. But before she stepped out of the dining room, she glanced back. Alexander sat perfectly still in his wheelchair, staring at the far wall as if lost in thoughts he would never share. For the first time, he looked less like a powerful millionaire and more like a man carrying something heavy, something he refused to set down. Emily walked away with a quiet, growing realization. She had married him for survival, but he was hiding something that would matter long before the gala. The next morning arrived quietly, with a thin layer of frost covering the garden outside Emily's window. She woke before sunrise, unsure if it was the unfamiliar bed or the weight of everything that stirred her awake. The mansion was silent, too silent, as if every sound was swallowed by its high ceilings and thick walls. A soft knock came at her door. "Mrs. Hayes, may I come in?" a woman's voice called gently. Emily stood quickly and opened the door. A tall woman entered, carrying a large leather case and a clipboard. Her hair was tied back neatly, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "My name is Claire. I am your stylist," she said. "Mr. Hayes informed me that you have your first public appearance soon, so we will begin preparations today." Emily stepped aside to let her in. Claire walked around the room with professional confidence, setting her case on the bed and opening it to reveal measuring tapes, fabric swatches, and a tablet full of reference photos. "We will need several looks," Claire continued. "A gown for the gala, 2 backup options, and a daytime outfit for any press interactions that might occur unexpectedly. Emily tried not to let her anxiety show. I have never done anything like this. Claire paused, then spoke more softly. I know this world can feel overwhelming, but I am here to help you navigate it. Mr. Hayes expects you to be prepared. The public will expect you to appear confident. Emily nodded, though her stomach tightened. Claire began taking measurements with gentle efficiency. She pressed fabric to Emily's shoulder, inspected the way colors contrasted with her skin, and took photos of her posture. All the while, Emily tried to focus on breathing steadily. As Claire packed her tools, she said, I need to meet with Mr. Hayes to confirm the color palette. I will return this afternoon with sketches. She exited as swiftly as she had entered. Emily stood alone again, feeling as if she had been swept into a life she could barely keep up with. A few hours later, Emily decided to explore the estate. She walked down the main staircase, her steps echoing faintly in the vast foyer. The house felt like a museum, beautiful but cold. She passed a long hallway lined with more portraits, each one painted with the same serious eyes and stern expressions. Every ancestor seemed to watch her as she moved. As she turned a corner, she almost collided with Dr. Ryan Porter. Oh, sorry, Emily said quickly. He smiled warmly. No need to apologize. How are you settling in? Emily hesitated. It is. A lot to adjust to. Dr. Porter nodded. It usually is. Alexander can be very particular about routines. He does not always make things easy for new people. Emily clasped her hands together. He is not unkind, just distant. Dr. Porter's expression softened. That distance has roots. The accident changed him. Not only physically, Emily waited for him to continue, but he did not. Instead, he gestured down the hallway. He is in his study this morning if you wish to speak with him. You will find that sometimes he prefers company more than he admits. Emily was not sure she believed that, but she thanked him and walked toward the study. The door was slightly open. She heard the low rustle of papers and the faint tapping of keys. She knocked lightly. Come in, Alexander said. Emily stepped inside. The study was large, filled with shelves of dark wood and books that looked untouched. Alexander sat at his desk, sunlight streaming through the window behind him. His expression was focused, but his eyes softened a little when he saw her. Is everything all right? He asked. Yes, Emily said. I just wanted to check in. Alexander closed the folder in front of him. Claire spoke with me. She said you did well. Emily nodded. She is very kind. He studied her for a moment, his gaze steady. This world can be difficult for outsiders. The people you will meet at the gala will judge you instantly. They always do. I know, she said quietly. But do not let them intimidate you, he continued. You are here for a reason. You have more resilience than you realize. Emily felt a strange warmth at his words, even though his tone remained measured. I will try, she said. Alexander looked away toward the window, his jaw tightening. The gala will be our first test. There will be cameras, reporters, people who will try to provoke reactions. You must stay calm. Emily nodded, even as her heart began to pound. And Emily, he added, whatever happens, do not walk away from me. Not in public. There was something urgent, almost vulnerable, beneath his steady voice. I understand, she replied. Alexander turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Good. Then we will manage this together. Emily stood there in the soft morning light, realizing something important. For the first time since she arrived, Alexander was not giving her instructions. He was asking for trust. Claire returned that afternoon exactly as she promised, carrying garment bags and folders of sketches. Emily stood near the window as Claire laid everything across the bed with practiced precision. Soft fabrics, shimmering materials, and delicate embroidery filled the room like pieces from a world Emily had never belonged to. This is the gown, Mr. Hayes approved, Claire said, lifting a navy dress with subtle silver beading that caught the light. It reflects the Hayes family palette, strong, elegant, and understated. Emily touched the fabric gently. It is beautiful, Claire nodded. It is more than beautiful. It photographs well, and it aligns with the image Mr. Hayes needs to project. Emily tried to imagine herself wearing it in front of cameras and strangers, standing beside a man whose presence could silence a room. Her stomach twisted with nerves. Claire sensed the tension. "You will be fine," she said. "Confidence is not about perfection. It is about posture, breath, and choosing when to speak. People respect composure." "I will try," Emily said softly. By late afternoon, Claire finished her session and left the estate. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the gown that hung neatly on the closet door. She wondered how a simple dress could feel like armor. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Mrs. Hayes," a voice called. It was the housekeeper. She held a small silver tray. "Mr. Hayes asked me to bring this to you," she said. "It is an invitation for the gala. He thought you should see the guest list." Emily thanked her and took the envelope. When the housekeeper left, she opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation printed on thick cardstock and a list of attendees. She recognized none of the names, but their titles struck her immediately. Chief Executive Officer, Senator, Philanthropist, Shareholder, Heiress, Board Director. Her fingers trembled slightly. This was not a social event. It was a battlefield where every gesture could be interpreted. As she read the list, one name caught her eye. Victoria Hale, Board Director, former fiancée of Alexander Hayes. Emily stared at the name, trying to process the sudden tightness in her chest. She knew Alexander's life before her had nothing to do with her new reality, but something about seeing the name printed so clearly made the situation feel more real, more complicated. Another knock sounded. Emily turned as the door opened slowly. Alexander sat in his wheelchair in the doorway, his posture straight, his expression calm but difficult to read. "May I come in?" he asked. "Yes," Emily said, stepping aside. He entered, his eyes moving briefly to the gown, then to the invitation in her hand. "You saw the list," he said. "Yes," Emily replied, her voice quiet. "It is overwhelming." "It is meant to be," he said. "This event is not just charity. It is a yearly gathering of people who believe they hold the world in their hands." Emily nodded. "I will do my best." Alexander studied her for a moment, his gaze steady. "You do not need to be perfect," he said. "You need to be present." The way he said it made her breath catch. There was a deeper meaning beneath the words, something he was not saying directly. Emily hesitated before speaking. "Victoria Hale will be there." Alexander's jaw tightened, but his voice did not waver. "She will," he said, "and she will likely approach us. She is direct and tactical. She enjoys leverage." Emily swallowed. "Why did you call off the engagement?" He paused for several seconds, weighing the question. "Because I discovered the difference between loyalty and ambition," he said finally. Emily felt the sincerity beneath his tone. Quiet, restrained, but real. "I am not asking you to compete with her," Alexander added. "You cannot. Your strength is different from hers." She met his eyes. "Is that why you chose me for this arrangement?" Alexander inhaled slowly. "I chose you because you do not stand in my world, and you do not want anything from it. That makes the arrangement safer." The words were honest, honest enough to sting a little. Emily nodded. "I understand." He looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then, he reached into his jacket and placed a small velvet box on the dresser. "This is the ring you will wear at the gala," he said. "The one from the courthouse was for paperwork. This one is for public eyes." Emily opened the box slowly. Inside was a diamond ring, simple but stunning, catching the light in quiet brilliance. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is necessary," Alexander replied. "People believe what they see. They believe symbols." He turned toward the door. "We will leave at 6 on the night of the gala. Claire will handle everything." He paused in the doorway. "And Emily," he said quietly, "do not let anyone decide your worth out there." Her breath caught again, not from fear this time, but from something else she could not name. When he left, Emily closed the velvet box gently. She did not know exactly what she was stepping into at that gala, but she was beginning to understand one thing. Nothing in this arrangement was as simple as it appeared. The evening of the gala arrived with clouds hanging low over the city, heavy with the threat of rain. Emily stood in front of the full-length mirror inside her room. the navy gown fitting her perfectly, as if it had been crafted around her heartbeat. Claire had styled her hair into soft waves that framed her face, and her makeup was subtle but polished, giving her the confidence she desperately needed. When she slipped on the diamond ring Alexander had given her, a quiet shiver ran through her. It felt cold at first, then strangely grounding, like a reminder that she carried something heavier than metal and stone. A knock sounded at her door. "Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes is ready," the housekeeper said. Emily inhaled slowly and stepped into the hallway. She walked down the grand staircase, her hand gliding along the railing. At the bottom, she saw Alexander waiting. He wore a tailored black suit, the cut sharp and elegant. Even seated in his wheelchair, he carried a presence that filled the room. His eyes lifted as she approached, and for a brief second, something softened in his expression. "You look prepared," he said. Emily managed a small smile. "I hope so." Alexander extended his hand. "Shall we?" She placed her hand in his, and together they moved toward the front door where the black car waited. The ride into downtown Chicago felt long and heavy with anticipation. Skyscrapers shimmered against the night sky as they passed, their reflections dancing across the wet streets. When they arrived at the gala venue, a towering hotel with golden lights sweeping across its entrance, Emily felt her chest tighten. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters waited with sharp eyes and hungry questions. People in designer clothing stepped out of their cars with the confidence of those who believed the world moved around them. Alexander noticed her tension. "Remember," he said quietly, "you are not here to impress them. You are here to stand beside me." His voice steadied her more than she expected. The car door opened, and the noise of the crowd rushed in. Emily stepped out first, her gown catching the light. Alexander followed as his driver helped wheel him onto the carpet. The cameras flared brighter. Voices rose. Reporters leaned forward with microphones extended. "Mr. Hayes, how is your recovery progressing?" "Alexander, is this your first public appearance since the accident?" "Mrs. Hayes, how does it feel to join the Hayes family?" Emily felt her breath quicken, but she kept her posture straight, just as Claire had taught her. She kept her hand lightly on Alexander's shoulder, steady and composed. They made their way toward the entrance, but before they could reach the doors, a woman stepped into their path. Tall, blonde, perfectly composed. Her gown shimmered like liquid gold. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp. "Alexander," she said smoothly, "it has been far too long." Emily recognized her instantly from the guest list. Victoria Hale. Alexander's posture tensed by the slightest degree, but his voice remained controlled. "Good evening, Victoria." Victoria's gaze shifted to Emily, gliding over her with thinly veiled scrutiny. "And this must be your new wife," she said. "How unexpected." Emily felt her stomach twist, but she kept her expression still. Victoria leaned a little closer, her voice dropping just enough to stay out of microphone range. "You must be overwhelmed," she said to Emily, her tone dripping with condescension. "These events can be difficult for people who are new to this level of society." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Victoria," he said coldly, "move." Her smile flickered. "You always did hate small talk," she replied, then nodded politely and stepped aside. "Enjoy your evening, both of you." As they passed her, Emily tried to steady her breathing. The moment the doors closed behind them, muffling the chaos outside, she finally exhaled. "Do not engage with her," Alexander said quietly. "She thrives on intimidation." Emily nodded. "I understand." They entered the grand ballroom, a sea of chandeliers and sparkling glass. People turned to stare. Conversations paused. Whispers floated through the room, quick and sharp like paper cuts. Alexander leaned slightly closer to Emily. "You are doing well," he said. "Better than some who were born into this." Emily felt a warm flush rise in her chest. But the moment of reassurance faded when a voice called from across the room. "Alexander Hayes." A man with silver hair approached, a pair of glasses perched low on his nose. He wore a tailored suit and a thin, critical smile. A board member, Emily realized. As the man stepped closer, he glanced at Alexander's wheelchair, then at Emily beside him. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Quite the entrance," he said. "I see your condition has not stopped you from making bold decisions." Emily felt Alexander go still. His eyes darkened. "Injury does not change leadership," Alexander replied. The man scoffed quietly. "We will see." He walked away before either of them could respond. Emily turned to Alexander. "Are you all right?" His voice was calm, but his grip on the wheelchair tightened. "They are waiting for me to fail," he said. "They always have." Emily looked around the room filled with powerful faces, all watching, all waiting. Then she looked back at Alexander. "They are wrong," she said. For the first time that evening, a faint hint of warmth touched his eyes. But it lasted only a moment because someone else was watching them now. Someone whose expression carried more hostility than curiosity. And Emily felt the shift in the air before she even turned her head. Something was about to break. A sudden hush rolled across the ballroom like a cold wind. Conversations dropped, champagne glasses paused mid-air, and every pair of eyes shifted toward a small group near the stage. Emily felt the tension first, a tightening in the air, followed by the sound of a microphone clicking on. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, holding a tablet in his hand. Emily recognized him from the program brochure. He was a journalist known for exposing corporate scandals. He cleared his throat before speaking, his voice echoing sharply through the speakers. "Before the charity auction begins, I believe our distinguished guest, Mr. Alexander Hayes, owes the public some clarity." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. Alexander straightened slightly in his wheelchair. His expression froze into a cold, unreadable mask. "Clarity about what?" he asked. The journalist turned the tablet outward, showing a medical document on the screen. "About the true nature of your injury," he said. "According to hospital records leaked to our team, you are not permanently paralyzed. In fact, scans show full nerve capability and no spinal damage. Would you like to explain why you have continued to present yourself to shareholders and the public as disabled?" The room erupted in gasps, shocked whispers slicing through the ballroom like knives. Emily felt her heart drop. She looked at Alexander. His jaw was locked, his eyes narrowed, but he did not speak. The journalist pressed further. Was this an attempt to gain sympathy during the succession battle? Or perhaps a strategic move to avoid accountability after your brother's scandal? "The public deserves answers, Mr. Hayes." Cameras lifted instantly. Guests raised their phones. Reporters pushed forward. A tidal wave of humiliation swept over Emily as every light in the room seemed to shine directly on them. Victoria Hale stepped closer, wearing a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Well," she said loudly, "this is interesting." Emily saw it happen in real time, people turning against Alexander, the board members whispering, guests shaking their heads. The room that once stared with envy now stared with judgment. Emily felt her pulse racing. She stepped closer to Alexander, her hand trembling but steady enough to rest on the back of his wheelchair. "Alexander," she whispered, "say something." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she met him, she saw real fear behind his controlled expression. Not fear of exposure, fear of failing in front of her. Emily's breath caught. She turned toward the crowd, lifting her chin, her voice clear and unwavering. "Enough!" The word cut through the noise. The ballroom fell silent. Every eye shifted to her. Emily continued, her voice steady. "Mr. Hayes never used his injury to manipulate anyone. He kept his recovery private because his family lived through a devastating scandal that the press tore apart. He was attacked, ridiculed, and hunted by cameras long before this night." She glanced at the journalist. "You believe you have found the truth, but leaking medical records is not truth. It is a violation." Whispers rippled again, softer this time, uncertain. Emily rested her hand more firmly on Alexander's shoulder. He did not fake being injured. He survived it. He healed. And healing does not require public permission. Alexander stared at her, stunned. The journalist stepped forward angrily. "Mrs. Hayes," "That does not excuse," Emily cut him off. "What it does excuse is the fact that he chose privacy over spectacle, which is more than I can say for anyone who would ambush a charity event to further their own career." The crowd murmured, shifting tone again. Sympathy flickered where hostility had been moments before. A board member spoke up from the back. "A leak of medical documents is a breach of corporate ethics. This must be investigated." Another nodded. She is right. This is not the place for accusations. The tide was turning. Emily looked down at Alexander, waiting for him to speak. He inhaled deeply, then rolled forward, his voice steady but carrying weight. My recovery was not a strategy, he said. It was pain. It was work, and it was personal. If anyone has questions, they can speak with my legal team. But tonight is not about me. It is about this charity. He paused, then added quietly. And it is about my wife, who has shown more integrity in one moment than some of you have shown in years. The room shifted again. Respect this time, not just curiosity. Emily felt heat rise in her chest, an unexpected swell of emotion she could not name. The host quickly regained control of the microphone and began redirecting the event back to the program. The crowd dispersed slowly, no longer whispering with cruelty, but with a mix of surprise and reluctant admiration. Alexander turned to Emily. You did not have to defend me, he said softly. Yes, Emily replied. I did. A long silence passed. Something unspoken settled between them, something warm and fragile. Thank you, he said. Emily smiled gently. We are supposed to be a team, remember? Alexander nodded slowly, the truth of it sinking in. As they exited the ballroom together, cameras flashed again, but for the first time, Emily did not feel the urge to shrink away. She stood tall beside Alexander, her hand resting on his shoulder. Because whatever their marriage began as a contract, a lifeline, a fragile arrangement, it had transformed into something undeniable. Not love, not yet, but loyalty, dignity, a beginning. And for Alexander Hayes, that was the first real victory of the night. Outside the hotel, the cold Chicago air wrapped around them like a curtain, sharp but cleansing after the suffocating heat of the ballroom. The driver waited with the car door open, but Alexander did not move toward it. Instead, he sat still in his wheelchair, staring out at the city lights shimmering across the wet pavement. Emily stood beside him, unsure if she should speak. The wind tugged gently at the hem of her gown and sent her hair drifting across her shoulders. Finally, Alexander exhaled slowly. You should not have had to defend me tonight, he said. Emily shook her head. I did what was right. Alexander looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the hotel lights. I have spent months letting people decide what they believe about me. Tonight, I saw what it looks like when someone stands with me instead of against me. Emily felt her heart turn in her chest, warm and unsteady. It is what anyone would have done, she whispered. No, Alexander replied quietly. It is not what anyone would have done. The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. For a moment, neither of them moved. He looked away, gathering his thoughts. Emily, he said softly, I need to tell you something. She stepped closer. What is it? He hesitated, and she saw something shift in his posture, tension unwinding, armor lowering, a truth pressing against the surface. The accident, he said. It did not paralyze me, but it did break me in ways that do not show on paper. I kept the wheelchair because it was easier than letting people see how unstable everything truly was. My family, the company, the board, and part of me remained in it because moving forward felt like betraying everything I lost. Emily listened, her chest tightening with empathy but not pity. You do not owe them explanations, she said gently. You owe yourself healing. Alexander's eyes softened. You speak of healing as if it is simple. It is not, she replied, but you are not doing it alone anymore. The words hung between them, delicate but powerful. The driver approached quietly. Mr. Hayes, the car is ready. Alexander nodded, but before he allowed himself to be taken to the car, he turned to Emily again. One more thing, he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, an envelope sealed with the Hayes family crest. Emily recognized it instantly. It was the contract, their marriage agreement. He held it out to her. Emily stared, her breath catching. What are you doing? Ending it, Alexander said. Not the marriage, the arrangement. Her eyes widened. He continued, his voice steady with intention. Tonight you did something I did not ask for, something I did not expect. You protected my dignity when everyone else tried to strip it away, and you did it not because you had to, but because it was right. He placed the envelope in her hands. I will not ask you to stay because of a contract. If we move forward, it must be by choice. Emily looked down at the envelope, feeling its weight. But Alexander, she whispered, are you sure? Yes, he said without hesitation. I am. She felt emotion build in her throat, almost too much to speak through. She opened the envelope slowly, pulling out the contract with trembling fingers. The paper rustled in the wind. One signature, two signatures, conditions, terms, boundaries. She looked back at him. Do you want me to tear it? She asked. I want you to choose what comes next, he said. Emily held the contract for a long moment, the city lights reflecting off the paper. Then she folded it gently, not tearing it, not discarding it, choosing something different. She placed it into Alexander's hand. My choice, she said softly, is to stay. Alexander inhaled as if the night itself had lifted from his chest. His eyes warmed with something fragile and real. Then let us start over, he said. Emily nodded. Together. A quiet smile, small, almost unseen, touched the corner of his mouth. The driver helped him into the car. Emily slid in beside him. The door closed, shutting out the noise of the city. For the first time since their arrangement began, the air between them did not feel like cold formality. It felt like possibility. As the car pulled away from the curb, Chicago's lights streaked across the windows, and Alexander turned to her one more time. Emily, he said softly. Thank you. She reached for his hand, not out of obligation, but out of something that felt honest. You are welcome, she whispered. The city faded behind them, replaced by the quiet promise of what came next. Not a contract. Not an arrangement. A beginning built on dignity, truth, and the faint, steady spark of something that could finally grow into love.